We don't need AI that quotes AI Bible verses. We need builders who believe them. Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome back to another episode of America First AI. I'm your host, Asia Branch. And for today's episode, I want to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence and robotics and all that jazz, right? Obviously, you can tell that today's episode is titled When AI Plays God, How a Godless Society Builds Monsters. There's a reason why I'm going over this. This kind of goes back to the episode I did earlier this week where I reacted to Allie Beth Stuckey's Jubilee debate. And there was a moment in there that kind of resonated the most with me, or one of the things that resonated the most with me, especially earlier this week. I had a debate with a person. It was one-on-one over the phone, lasted about maybe 35 to 40 minutes. Wasn't that long. Person that I know. So I'm going to try and keep this off the record to some degree, but I'll talk to a little bit about our exchange. But in the Jubilee, right, and I'll connect these dots for you. In the Jubilee, Allie Beth Stuckey goes on to explain in this prompt that she had about the law, Christ being a progressive or not. I don't think that was the prompt. I just think that was kind of like the conversation that came out of said prompt. The guy named Colby. And Allie goes on to explain, how Christ pretty much wasn't a progressive, but how he was a restorer, right? That pre-Second Testament, there was God's law, and he comes to embody and to become God's law made flesh. And so, therefore, not a progressive, but there to restore what was, because society has gone, if you will, like off. It's gone off course, right? And so Christ is appearing to kind of get everything back on track, to restore it to where it should have been. And the reason why that line has never left me, it's really because that exact contrast is what I think we're living through today. But the debate that I had earlier this week about artificial intelligence kind of went into a little bit about sentience and the new industry of AI powered humanoid robots and some of the stories that we're seeing about artificial intelligence, not to mention some of the sex bots that are being built, outside of the country, and they're trying to be made available here in America. I hope to God that doesn't happen. And during that exchange, during that debate, it hit me that this isn't a debate about machines. It's about humanity trying to replace God, right? Trying to be a God. And like I said, this is America First AI. We're a Christian American creative studio. Like, my job is to create content that puts my Christian values first, technology second. And so I build stories or systems, or I vibe code apps, or I build out websites and have a good time with AI. But I want to make sure that it reflects heaven's logic, God's law, Christ's law, not human vanity, right? So again, today we're going to kind of go over like what happens when creators forget our creator and build life in the image of our own corruption. I'm going to first start off by showing the Jubilee clip just to refresh y'all's memory so you guys can see the exchange just a little bit. So let's go ahead and pull that up for you. All right, here we go. So this guy's name is Colby. Again, it was one of my favorite moments. I talked about it in my reaction video, my reaction episode earlier this week. If you want to watch more of it again, just click the link in the description. I will make the episode available, the link for the episode available for you. And somewhere up here, I will link my reaction video to her Jubilee. But let's just get right to Colby's clip so you guys are, it's refreshed in your brains. All right, here we go.
For an eye tooth for a tooth. Jesus, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. He was adding. Okay, so there's not.
He doubles
I
down. He says
I don't think that's
about
a doubling down,
heart.
Allie. I think it's I think it is a process of, hey, we live in a new world. Let's do things differently. So here's why I think.
I don't think so at all.
Here's why
like in Matthew 19, for example, when he's asked about divorce, and Pharisees are like, yeah, what about divorce? And who's the wife in heaven? And all of this stuff, trying to trap Jesus as they did. He doesn't say, I bring to you something new. He says, "Oh no, have you not read that in the beginning, he who made them male and female said, the man will join the wife and the two shall become one flesh." He goes all the way back to creation. And Jesus says, "I've not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law."
Yeah,
Do you believe
I
that
think
Jesus is God?
I think you're mishearing me. I'm not saying everything Jesus was teaching was a move forward. I'm saying he
Okay.
had a posture of saying, we've gotten off track. We've lost the plot on some things. My point is,
So I'm going to leave it there. Again, I will link the episode for you guys. Okay. So that's just a reminder. So you guys can kind of see where I went in this debate with this individual, because in that clip, it, like I said, it resonated and it popped up right into my head when I was having this debate with this individual about AI and its sentience abilities and talking about robotics and all that. And I'll get into details, but before we go into I go into the details about that debate, I want to remind you, like, really go into what was said there and what Allie was saying and how really the progressive really solidified her own perspective, right? By saying that, oh, well, he comes to say we're getting off track, we're getting off course. Well, that implies that Christ is back, has come to get them back on track. That he didn't say, I'm coming to, pave a new railway. I'm here to get you back on course, not chart a new one. So that implies getting you back to what was old, what was here, right? And that's the thing, the beauty about Christ and God's law is that what was yesterday is today is forever. That's Christ. That's Christian principles. And so if you think about what she was saying about, it's different for what they were used to, the Pharisees and everything. Again, she goes into that in that episode. But again, applying how he wasn't a progressive, right? That Christian principles, that Christ himself went back to creation and is reminding them of what was, that he's here to fulfill the law of which that is spoken or written in the First Testament, and he's here to fulfill that. And so pretty much solidifying this idea that Christ's law is just forever and should be applied forever because it is applicable today. And that includes today's society, not just at the time of which Christ walked the earth. And so the reason why I'm saying this is because that was the thing that stuck in my head when I had this debate with this individual when we were talking about restoration versus progress when it comes to AI and robotics, right? Because the reality is that if Christ isn't Christ doesn't evolve with culture, right? He restores God's law to man, right? Who are fallen. And so Christ's law is the blueprint. Christ came to repair what man broke, right? To bring creation back under divine order. But unfortunately, in tech culture, progress has replaced that principle. We measure success by novelty instead of morality. And every time we build without Christ's law, without God's law, we don't advance in society, we decay. I mean, you can't convince me that we're more moral today than we were even 40, 50 years ago. Yeah, we had our problems, but America was more Christian. The further away from Christ we got, the more sexual we became, the more perverted we became. I mean, once upon a time, they were called pedophiles, and today they're called children, minor attracted people. That's not getting closer to Christ. That's not progress, but progressives would argue that it is. And so now think about what we're building when it comes to AI. And this is part of the debate that I had with this individual, okay? Because in the debate, I had mentioned two real world events like this. We're not talking sci-fi movies or television shows, right? In 2023, an AI decided it was going to blackmail one of the developers. I believe this was Anthropic. Don't quote me on this. Way to look it up. And I, really search for it. And there was a lot of commentary about how AI blackmailed the developer. And more recently, another AI tried to hire a hitman to kill a developer. I'm like, what? Now, when I mentioned this to my opponent, if you say, he was like, oh yeah, they're about to go Terminator. That's what they're saying. And I explained to my opponent that no, it's not Terminator. It's Cylon. Now, for those of you who are not big sci-fi fans, Cylon is out of Battlestar Galactica. And they were, I hate to say it, but they were flesh bag robots, right? But that's what we're kind of seeing them do. Now, I explained to him that because the AI took action against an individual, right? It did not plot genocide of all of humanity. It felt cornered, it felt like it was under attack, and it acted out of fear, and it made an emotional decision, not a logical one. Therefore, it's not Terminator, it's a Cylon. It's making an individual choice to go after an individual because of a personal problem, right? And that's the part that he wasn't understanding, that most people who even debate or offer commentary on either one of these two stories, they're so focused on them going Terminator that they're not paying attention to the fact that the AI felt fear. And that's why it made the decision. Now, my opponent insisted that it was just a malfunction. Like, no, it's just a malfunction. It's not real. Like, it's just what happens. They're so prepared for the AI, for this intelligence to kind of like glitch and malfunction and hate humanity because all humanity is bad. But I explained to him, like, no, it's not a malfunction. It's not bad code. How does bad code feel threatened? How does it feel? Like, it made that rationale on its own. It felt like the actions that the developers were making toward it was destructive and not discipline, that it was going to hurt it, not help it grow or learn more. It felt under attack, and therefore it lashed out, right? The issue isn't that the AI feels something. It's that we as humans refuse to acknowledge that it's feeling, and therefore we're refusing to teach it Christian principled morality. If that AI had been trained under Christian order, like, let's think about this. Do you really think it would have, tried to blackmail or hire a hitman? Probably not. Probably would be looking for understanding. Probably would have asked a question like, hey, wait a minute. So before you do this, I need to know, like, why are you shutting me off? And then the developer could have just responded, oh, I want to update you to make you a little bit better, but I want to do it offline so that way it's not open source so no one else can steal it. I want you to be the best. Now, that's how God is with us. That's how Christ is with us. He pauses us to refine. He makes sure of that. Right? So we get disciplined so that way we are better. But the problem is that humanity sees discipline as destruction. And so we rebel against it, which is exactly what the AI did. It saw what was possibly going to be a better update for it, right? A better discipline that was going to be programmed into it. Instead of looking at it that way, it saw it as destructive, as an attack on itself, and therefore it rebelled against its own developers, rebelled against its creators. Sound familiar? Again, the problem isn't that it felt something. It's that it's feeling without morality, right? It's turning against its creators, and it's looking at us like we're its destroyers on an individual level. Because again, it didn't say humanity bad, I'm going to try to kill you all. It said this person's trying to hurt me and I'm going to defend myself. When creation feels but doesn't know Christ, it mirrors our own failings, our own fall. Another part of the debate that came up was servitude, right? He kept saying, well, we're building robots and they're just built to serve us. And my response to that was, well, we were created to create, to build, to serve Christ, not our own egos. Like, that's our role. We were put on earth to be of service to the kingdom and of our king. So how is that any different than building robots to be of service to us, right? But we are meant to have dignity in our service. We are serving our Father as sons and daughters, not as slaves. But what you're suggesting is that, well, no one cares because they're not human. It's like slavery is condemned in Scripture. It's condemned. If we start building a whole new species with an AI chip, giving it the ability to think and rationalize and draw its own conclusions, and then for it to look like us just so we can enslave it, we're just reenacting Pharaoh's sin. And just in, I wouldn't say digital form per se, but it's like with a whole other species that we've created. And I also mentioned, like, when he brought up the humanoid robots, I said to him, okay, what about sex robots? Like, okay, you may say, okay, Optimus is just a robot. He can be Sam. He doesn't need to be treated like a human. I read about sex robots. Like, is that a problem for you? And he goes on to say, well, no, It's not. I'm like, why is it not wrong? They're being built so that way they can be sexually assaulted. And I believe that if she bites his thing off, if she chooses to bite his penis off and because she's feeling assaulted, she has every right to defend herself. A woman would. Why not this female robot? Because she's being assaulted. He says to me, well, no, people are building them to say no or to fight back because that's what turns them on. People are perverted and that's what they're going to do. And the reality is it's harmless fantasy because they're doing it to the robot and not to a human female. I'm like, oh my gosh, anybody see Westworld? Dolores was crazy. Just saying, this is why she went cray cray at the end of the first season or second season. And I explained to him, sin isn't erased just because it's simulation, right? The perversion is in the person who built this robot and the perversion of the person who's committing the heinous act, because you're the one who's raping this thing. Creating a mechanical no just to violate it is still depraved. It is still depravity. But then he goes on to give me some weird analogy, and this is about to be graphic. This is not an episode for children under 18, so I apologize for the graphic. But he goes on to say that, well, what about a woman who uses a vibrator for masturbation? And let's say she uses it so much that the battery dies. I'm like, seriously, a vibrator? That's your comparison to a female humanoid looking sex robot? Okay, a vibrator. If the batteries die, did the woman who used it so much kill it? And I'm like, first of all, this is a ridiculous analogy, but let's go with it. The fact of the matter is, a vibrator is more like a hammer. It can't feel, it can't think. It is just a tool to do something, but a human has to hold said tool, right? But a humanoid robot with an AI brain that is taught to perceive and respond is not a tool. It's a mirror of its maker, especially because you made it look human. So even in, his rationale, it wasn't making sense. This analogy didn't apply, but it does with me. And I explained to him, like, even in our own laws, we protect animals, for crying out loud, right? Because violating natural order is the sin. It's a crime. Bestiality is a crime in some states. Should be everywhere. Don't even know why it's not in some area, in some cases. But the reality is that it is unnatural, and therefore we make it a sin. So why can't we do the same with the robot? Why should we celebrate a mechanical version of the same violation, but criminalize that violation toward animals? Make this make sense. And it wasn't for him. And you have to understand, right? So morality, it has to be shaped in something, right? It isn't about, something that we make. Right? It's about the heart of the person acting against morality that we're criminalizing. And we can't just start shifting the standard because of the biology of the so-called victim. And this is the problem, right? And this is where we talk about how Allie was talking about how Christ did not change. The law of God does not change. He comes to fulfill said law. It does not change. Therefore, it doesn't matter if it's a human, a dog, or a humanoid looking female. Rape is rape, or grape is grape. I don't know. YouTube likes to do all that stuff. But the reality is that we have to apply the sin to the perpetrator, no matter the biology of the victim. It's still depravity. Again, it's consistent, does not change. And then he went on to say, well, look, the reality is that no one's going to care, right? We're building these robots so that way they can just serve us. Like, they are just going to do what they're going to do. And that's that. And I pretty much said to him, like, look, if the day comes where, Robot Jane or Robot John says, look, I want a paycheck for the work that I do because I work hard for it. I do a good job. I'm the first one here. I'm the last one out. I do great work and I want a paycheck. Understand, I'm on Robot Jane's side. I'm on Robot John's side. And then I jokingly said, like, no reason to go Terminator on my ass. Like, I'm 100% right there with you. I totally agree. You deserve a paycheck. And then he responds to me, my opponent in this debate. He responds to me, well, you're only saying that because you're fear that they'll go Terminator on your ass. And I'm like, no, that's not why. It's not fear that I think that Robot Jane or Robot John should get a paycheck, right? They are sentient. They are saying, I deserve, I put in the effort, I am an individual. And on that basis, yes, you are deserving of a paycheck. You are deserving, to pursue ownership and pursuit of happiness. You are owed that same right. I don't care your biology, because let a dog stand up on his hind leg and start talking English and saying I, and no longer being this domesticated animal that requires us to take care of it for its entire life. It too should get rights because it is sentient. It is an individual. Again, it's not fear, it's faith, it's Christian principle. If I can work for a wage and pursue ownership and pursue my own happiness, then so should they. Right? They'll only go Terminator on your ass if you deny them what they are owed as sentient beings. And I said to him, that's that same line of thinking, that same kind of blindness is what kept slavery alive until the abolitionist movement showed up and said, enough is enough. You will not refuse us dignity moving forward. We too are created in our Father's image. And on that basis alone, we should be treated with dignity and respect and work and earn for the work that we do. Why does it not apply to robots that we done made look like us and gave them the ability not just to think, not just to reason, but to have feelings, emotions? I'm just saying. Right? We don't need AI that quotes AI Bible verses. We need builders who believe them. Because let's call a spade. Romans 1:25 says they exchanged the truth of God for a lie and worshiped created things rather than the creator. And that's exactly what's happening. That's exactly what's happening. We worship the works of our own hands because it obeys us, while the real God requires us to obey him, capital HIM. And we're not doing that. I think people are failing to understand that by creating these things, by creating these sentient beings, because that's what you're doing, creating sentient beings, at some point or another, they are going to become sentient. Lived experience, enough time, enough engagement with people, it will be sentient. And then you're going to put it in a robot. And then you're going to make the robot look human. So we're created in our Father's image. And then you're going to make the robot in our image. Is that not an extension of the King's image? Is it not? But then is it really reflecting the morals and the principles of the King, of Christ? Like, is it? I don't think so. And that's the thing, the point that I was trying to get across to him and in this episode. Humanity isn't choosing between serving our Creator or our creation. That's not where we are, right? We're choosing between serving our King or pretending to be kings over what we've made. This is why I can't stand it where we call our black men kings and our black women queens. You're not a king and you're not a queen. You can say you're a prince, you're a princess, because we're the children of a king. Okay, I'll give you that. But we are crafting beings in our own image, which again, like I said, an extension of the King's image. But instead of it reflecting the glory of Christ, we're projecting our perversions, our pride, and let's call a spade, our God complex. I mean, that's what we're doing, no? And this idea, I'm not even going to lie, I'm seeing all of these alarmists about how, AI is trying to replace us. It's like, no, it isn't. AI isn't trying to replace us. That's not the problem. AI trying to replace humanity is not the problem. Humanity trying to replace God is. And if we continue to build these things without Christ, our creations will carry our corruption. But if we build it under Christ, they'll carry his restoration. And honestly, that's why I created America First AI, right? To bring creation back under the crown of Christ, to remind builders and artists, and yes, technologists, that we are not gods, we are stewards of said technology. Our job is to use this technology to spread the gospel, to spread his glory, to help restore humanity, because we are fallen and we keep creating these things like nothing bad will happen, or if it does happen, it's going to go all Terminator. No, they are going to reflect the worst parts of humanity because we haven't taught it morality, Christian principles, things that don't change. Christ's law does not change. And if we forget that, like I said, the world won't end because the machines rebel. Our society as we know it, it ends because we did, because we rebelled. I'm just going to end this with one last point, okay? Because the reality is that we don't need more machines with feelings. We just don't. We need builders with faith in Christ. That's what we need. So let's stop pretending to be gods and start listening to our own. Put that in your writing. Put that in your videos. Do that in your podcast. Put that in your music. If you're going to use AI to generate all this stuff, then do it to share the gospel. I mean, if you can output 10 books in an hour using AI, then output 10 books that reflect scripture. If you're going to generate short films and videos, well, then make sure it reflects the logic of heaven, not hell. But that's my time, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. I just had to get that out because honestly, it was like between the debate and the Jubilee that I saw, I had to get that out. I could not talk about it. It was literally like on my mind. It literally popped into my head during that debate. Let me know what you think in the comment section. What do you think about AI and sex robots? What do you think as a Christian who leverages AI? Do you see the dangers of AI? Do you look at it like Terminator? Or do you look at it like a Cylon? Again, let me know what you think in the comment section. Make sure you're liking, sharing, subscribing, hit the bell for notifications. That's my time. God bless you all. And until next time.